Hi there, and thank you for watching and wanting more. This show is an offspring of the work I do with senior executives who long to be more and have that show up in their leadership. It's not an exclusive pursuit, as we all desire more effectiveness in who we be. It's a precondition for life, really. We're called to be active participants in our own evolution, which is right. To actively participate in our own evolution, we must look inside ourselves, and this is how we keep growing and going. So we live in a universe of laws, and only if these laws are observed, though, can we realize more. And all we have to do to observe these laws is channel and focus our thoughts so that we're moving forward to more success and peace of mind. Today we're privileged to speak with Andy Pringle, who is the Chief of Staff in the Office of the Leader of the Official Opposition. Prior to that, Andy spent 30 years with RBC Capital Markets, a leading international corporate investment bank. He retired from that firm in 2002 as Managing Director, Head of Global Fixed Income, and a member of the firm's Executive Committee. More noticeably now, though, Andy contributes his time and energy to a number of community organizations. He is the volunteer president of the Canadian Foundation for AIDS Research since 1995 and has spent the past 5 years as a full-time volunteer fundraiser for that cause. He is a past chair of the board of Upper Canada College and a former member of the Fundraising Advisory Committee for the 519 Community Centre. Andy, thanks for taking the time to come in and join us on More.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Sheila.
Thanks, Andy. Let's focus today's show on how you've channeled your thoughts to realize more in your life. And I remember you sharing in your office that your original objective once upon a time was law. Where did that objective originally come from? Can you take us back there?
Well, my dad was a lawyer, and my uncle is a lawyer. And I guess as you're growing up and going through high school, you're thinking about where you're going to go. And I, like everybody, this, keep in mind, was the late 1960s, so a long time ago. And my original thought was I was going to work in the legal business and join the firm that my dad and my uncle were partners in. But I worked as a summer student, starting in the mailroom at a firm called Dominion Securities, the predecessor to RBC Capital Markets. I guess starting the time I was about 16 or 17, and I worked in the mailroom and then on the floor of the Toronto Stock Exchange. And after I graduated from the University of Western Ontario, that firm approached me about working full-time for them, and I did, really it suited me far better. And I look back now on what my friends that are lawyers and the amount of reading and the amount of work they have to do, and I'm glad I chose what I did.
So was that really it? Like, kind of take us to where you were in that choice. When you were considering law or when you were considering getting into investment banking more, what were the thought processes that would have had you going one versus the other? You know,
I don't think it was too terribly complex. It was a question of the fact that I think I had, like everybody, had been all through grade school, high school, and university, and now was looking at the prospect of 5 more years or 4 more years of law. I'd been accepted to law school. Yet a firm that I'd worked with, and I'd worked on the trading side as a summer student on the floor of the stock exchange, wanted me to come and work for them. And it's the first time in your life that someone really wants you. So I thought, well, heck, I'll try it for a year. And how bad can it be? And of course, once I got in there, I loved it and decided to stay. And I was lucky in a way, because I think almost within about a year of joining them full time in 1972, the first of the big mergers in the brokerage business happened. Harris and Partners with my firm, Dominion Securities, merged, and I got kind of stuck at that point in time in the fixed income trading business, and it was a business that was just about to emerge and explode. So I was really just lucky to be where I was. So
you were a history major when you got started, your undergrad degree. How did a history major kind of find himself having to choose between law and 5 more onerous years of doing that, or an investment banker?
Simply because they asked me.
So now, once upon a time, would you have ever thought that life was that simple? If you think of how pivotal, of how critical the decision.
When you're 21 years old or 22 years old, it seemed like an easy thing to do. And of course, when you're that age, as opposed to 58, the age I am now, when you're that age, all the options seem open to you. At 58, they're a lot narrower.
Which is interesting, because I think that is a mindset. Because you're almost more in control at 58 than you were at 21. So your ability, as evidenced by your choices now, are totally yours to make.
Well, I can no longer play touch football. My hockey has slowed down dramatically, so you may be in control more intellectually, and you may be better connected and more experienced. But at that age, I think it's actually, you know, I tell my kids, it's the best time of your life, and all kinds of kids, whether they're my own kids or people that work in the various groups I'm with, seem to be concerned about what's the next path, what's the guiding light that's going to take me beyond university, which is the end of a pretty planned course of grade school, high school, and university. And I think it's actually the best time of your life when you need to talk to people, explore, and I try to identify the challenges that are really intrigue you, because if you find something that you enjoy doing, you'll always do well at it. So.
That's excellent. That thinking about the consequence of choice, talk a little bit. Can you say a little bit, because that is very profound and that is very helpful. But just to finish that piece off, if we could. What did you know? What were the consequences? Dad and Uncle were lawyers, and you're not going their path anymore.
You know, what was the I don't think
of that
I
choice?
realized immediately how good it was. I knew that day to day I enjoyed it, and it was a pretty simple equation as a trader. You were given an opportunity to trade a portion of the firm's capital, and if you did well, they paid you extremely well. If you did badly, they fired you. So it was a pretty black and white formula. And I thrived in it. Again, I was not a very good athlete, but a constant athlete. Pick up hockey, football, all kinds of things. And to me, it was a similar experience. In those days, the market started at roughly 9:30 and finished at 4. And during that period, it was fairly intense. So it was like playing a sport. And I enjoyed that and thrived at it. And so you didn't think that you were actually working. And then after I'd done it for about 5 years, you started to get a little fed up with the game and the sameness of it. And so I started to want to move into management and control some of that. And so that was the next phase of development.
Well, that is great. We want to get into that when we come back from the commercial break. But first, before we go to commercial break, I just want to, now, you know what, we won't be able to do it fast. So here's what, we're going to have a quick break. We invite you back for more with Andrew Pringle. Thank you. Stay with us. Welcome back to more, and thanks for joining us. I'm Sheba Varghese, and with me today is Andrew Pringle, Chief of Staff to the Leader of the Official Opposition. Andy, in speaking with you, got a clear sense that you have sought to be pretty intentional throughout your life.
Yeah, I think it's, I wouldn't have said that. I would have said that I'm always kind of thinking ahead. And as that kind of goes against the answer that I gave you just before the commercial about the exploration. But when you're young, when you're coming out of university, and people throw things at you, that's one thing. But when you start to work and you get into a phase where the first several years, in my case probably 4 or 5, were an apprenticeship as you develop your skills as a trader. And then wanting to move more into a control position, management, take, in effect, greater responsibility. That's when at least I realized that this was what I was going to do longer term. I had a career. But I also had a sense, even at that stage, as I thought... How
did the shift into management automatically then put longer term implications for you, just because in your mind?
You're starting to think, as I tried to explain, I think when I came out of university, it was just a reaction. You need to get a job. You weren't quite sure what the world held. Students that were going on to graduate work or law or something like that had a clear further education vision. But I was going to try the workforce. Once I knew that I really liked it, and it did take a couple of years to really realize that you really enjoyed what you were doing, because like everything, as you get better at it, you get more intellectually involved in it. And So, probably about the time I was 26 or 27, I started to think, okay, where is this going to take me longer term? And that's when you start to think about management. At the same time, I started to think about, okay, what is the long-term cycle? So even at that age, I think I had known that I wanted to, and it probably came to me really as early as my time at Upper Canada College, that I'd seen my dad and his dad kind of work for one company, retire, and then die at a relatively early age. And my thought was always that life was too short not to do several things. And so it was at that stage in my mid-20s that I started to say, okay, how long am I going to be at DS, at the Dominion Securities? And if I want to move into management, how senior do I want to be? How senior can I go? Do I want to stay doing this all my life? And the answers were, no, I want to do other things as well. So you set yourself, in my case, some goals.
How did you know, Andy, to even ask yourself those questions? Because a lot of people don't.
In my case, I was just sitting down thinking about it. As I say, somewhere along the line at Upper Canada College, I got a sense that of the completeness of life, and also a sense of the desire to make a contribution, to give back is a phrase I don't like, but it seems to be how it describes it. So that if, today, I think the average Canadian lives to be roughly 80 years old, I always think the last thing you want to do is be, God willing, on your deathbed at age 80, painlessly, God willing, and looking back, and the last thing you want to do is say, I wish I hadda. So you better work to get yourself in a position now and plan to do it, because otherwise I think too many people let life run them, as opposed to saying, okay, by this stage I hope to be doing this, by this stage I hope to be doing that, and by this stage I hope to be doing that.
So there's no question that the path you went down served you tremendously. I mean, that's why you're where you're at today. So that's great, and you had to take a lot of drive to be able to have been as successful as you've been. At the same time, what I caught you saying is it took you 2 years to really get your head around the role and to really feel like, yeah, I really enjoy this. You explained that the intellect got more engaged as you went along. Let me ask you, just kind of jumping to another point, but along the same path. Have you done often things in your life where you didn't have to wait 2 years to find out that, you know what, I like this. I'm really jazzed by this. Have you had those experiences in your life?
Yeah, I'm sure I have, but if you're talking about the longer life plan and where you're going, it takes time to think about it.
But I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm obviously there has to be a master plan or a bigger vision, if you will. But I guess what I'm wondering, as we talk about more and this whole idea of more, a lot of times our more comes to us from the outside. We tend to get clarity based on what we're told our more must be, and we find a way, because we are resourceful, and certainly you are, to make that happen. So I guess I'm just wondering that if you kind of thought back to what you're wanting to feel more of in those first 2 years. Was it the technical side of things? Was it kind of a specific experience? I guess I'm just wondering, what were the consequences of saying, I'm going to make this go?
Well, I think, first of all, you, like any job, you come in as a trainee or as an apprentice, and it takes you a while to understand the technical aspects and to move ahead. And as I said earlier, when you get comfortable with them, I think you get more intellectually engaged. So I would say after 3 years, I knew that I really wanted to stay longer term. Before that, I'd always had in the back of my mind, well, if I don't really like it in 6 more months, I can go to law school.
Why did you keep giving it 3 years? Why did that 6 months go?
Because I was enjoying it, but it didn't, at that stage, it was still too new to be able to puzzle out where it might go in the longer picture.
Okay, great.
And,
so you stayed true to, what was it, a curiosity that you had? Was it the promise of the potential and the payoff? Like,
I loved I loved the game of trading. It was, as I say, a little bit like Peter Pan, like never growing up, but the rules were simple. They gave you a certain amount of money to handle on behalf of the firm, and a certain number of clients to help. And if you did well, they paid you well, and if you didn't do well, they showed you the door.
Gotta like it when it's that clear of a formula. But, okay, so just, what do you base most of your decisions on now even?
Well, in terms of the life plan, the choices I make, I guess it comes back to a development over a long period of time of a personal philosophy that we all have in life. Mine started, as I say, at high school at Upper Canada College, where it was very much one of accomplishment and service. One of the kind of catch mottos that they use is teaching young men to do good and do well. Well, you want to do well in your profession, you want to bring up a family, you want to have the opportunities for that family that you think are appropriate, sending them to the right schools, etc. You need to plan for your own retirement. But you also want to make a contribution. And so over the years, that kind of germ has continued to grow with me in developing my thinking, so that when I got to be in my approaching the age of 50, I thought, well, if I'm ever going to leave Dominion Securities and the investment business, as much as I love it, it's going to have to be now, because if I ever want to do some of these other things.
Let's take another short break. Please stay with us for more. We'll be back. Hi again, you are still watching More, and I'm still here with Andrew Pringle. Andy, you're in a good groove in a space. You've had a real great opportunity to think about things. You've taken the time, you've made yourself think about things, and you put some structure to your journey. Tons of kudos for that. You're in a good groove and you're in a good space. And as a result, you're here now. And so we spoke about kind of the whole luxury of choices and of intentionality. In your case, you're in a really great place. You're at DS, you had a great job, you're humming along, you're making big bucks, everything's good. You're the man. So why then does somebody choose to walk away from that when they didn't have to? What was driving you? I don't want it to be just a change the world.
Well, it does not change the world. It comes back to that discussion that germ of thought that I picked up when I was in high school at Upper Canada that said there's more to life, and then reinforced by watching my dad, and his father, to say, okay, what are you going to do with your life? One of the things you have to do is or want to do, bring up a family and make sure they're well provided for. But beyond that, how do you want to make a contribution? And given the fact that you do have a specific but unknowable amount or unknown amount of time on the earth, you better get on with it. So from my point of view, it was, as I said, over a long period of time, from the time I was in high school until the time I was close to 50. I mean, I think I knew at the age of 40 that I would leave the investment business at 50, and by 45 I knew where I would spend my focus with AIDS and the environment. I'd already been involved with the AIDS movement, as you pointed out in your introduction, since probably 1992, and I've been president since 1995 of CANFAR, which is the Canadian Foundation for AIDS Research. It's the only organization in the country raising money to fund research in Canada into a cure for HIV and AIDS.
Why did you choose that as the cause that spoke to your heart?
Choose originally got involved with it because Valerie's brother was in a high-risk group. He's a member of the gay community, and so I think Valerie was one of the first journalists in the country when she was at, I guess at midday for CBC, and back at Barbara Frum in the Journal. I think she was one of the very first to do consistent stories about HIV. So we were very concerned about it from an early stage, and then when I got involved with it, it just kind of took me on. When I was planning to leave Dominion Securities, you really ask yourself, okay, what are some of the things that you want to spend some time doing where you think you might be able to make some small contribution? And it just seemed to me that the two big challenges of my generation were in many ways the environment and dealing with HIV and AIDS. So the HIV and AIDS was already there. The environmental stuff, I've been involved with some of our own research at the university about how we might develop a structuring or a kind of an almost a ranking service for corporations for their environmental stewardship. And I've also been involved with the Evergreen Foundation, Jeff Cape, who's doing the redevelopment of the Toronto Brickworks, and Evergreen's been around greening Toronto schools for, I think, 2 decades. So I've been involved with a number of those things.
When you think of all the causes that are out there and all the things, and I appreciate the personal aspect as it relates to the HIV, AIDS endorsement or support, I guess when you look at all of the issues that are out there and you kind of put them collectively on a table, and if you had to kind of, this I don't even know what, it might be a silly question, if you kind of looked at all the issues that we have out there in the world, when you think of who you be, Andy, a person who acts on conviction, and a person who's motivated by his passions for those convictions, when you look at that, the mess we have on the table, where do you kind of want to really most?
Well, it's a combination of a couple of things. From my point of view, as I said, HIV and AIDS was a very personal challenge to start with, and the more you looked at it, again, like the trading business, the more you know about it, the more comfortable you come with it, and I think it's one of the great challenges of our time. This week, as we're doing this interview, and I realize it's taped, the World AIDS Conference is going on in Mexico City. It was last here 2 years ago, and we helped at CANFAR chair the opening ceremonies for it. And that's, I think, raising the awareness that the AIDS problem is still much more complex than we thought. So there's a lot of work to be done there. And CANFAR, by raising money to fund research in Canada, it helps develop a knowledge-based economy in this country. It helps develop long-term solutions for this. The end result is people are living longer today because of the AIDS cocktail, which is the result of research. Not obviously ours, but others.
I read in a
so
quote
that's hugely important.
In an interview
the environment,
that
the same thing.
Sorry, I read in an interview that you did, Andy, just that while that's the case as relates to the HIV side, it was an uphill battle for you in terms of trying to get big corporations to kind of endorse it, and so it is. So when I look at the history, an art major like myself, like a Bachelor of Arts degree, both our art majors, we both took very different paths. You found a way to get your head around the numbers and went down that investment banking role, and so as you did, inevitably, the whole need to kind of do your risk assessments, the kind of cost versus benefit and return on investment and those types of things. Where, kind of when you look at things now, in the world over, or even right here in Canada, let's start in our own backyard, what is the cause that you see brings the most return on your time?
I think it's a combination of where the need is and what's personal. When I left Dominion Securities, first of all, it was a tough decision to do, and they asked me to stay on an extra 4 or 5 months, and I did. But yet, after I'd done it, and it took about a year and a half to get comfortable to the new role, it was the best decision one of the best decisions I ever made in my life, and I've enjoyed working with these different challenges, with the environmental groups, with the AIDS groups, with projects like 519, which is a world leader, a community center at Church in Wellesley that my friend Salah Bashir got me involved in, with Upper Canada College, which is obviously a very personal thing for me. And then one of the things that and there were 4 or 5 other not-for-profits as well, the Canadian Council of Christians and Jews and their program of diversity in the school system. But as I looked and as other opportunities came to me, because essentially what I was a fundraiser, someone that could, had some contacts, could make some phone calls, and could make a sales pitch on behalf of causes. I got approached. Actually, I approached the John Tory when he was running for mayor, because I felt I actually no longer had a right to pound my fist on the table and complain about government if I didn't kind of get involved in some fashion. So I supported John for mayor, and that led me into the political side, which I do now.
Andy, you've got so much to say, and I want to ask you so many other questions as each thing spins off, but that's our time for today. So I want to thank you so much Just, thank you to, as a Chief of Staff, to John Tory. We really appreciate you taking the time to come in and talk with us. And, you're a person of conviction. I keep saying that. And that is a courageous, demanding pursuit to have, because as conviction always demands action. So on behalf of all of us, sojourners in this journey, thank you for your contributions.
Well, thank you. It's been delightful to be here with you.
We've said it before, that the opportunities and possibilities are endless. We never reach our limits, we only think we do. Let's direct our thoughts and energies towards what we want more of in our lives. And in some cases, this may feel like a luxury, the notion that we are able to influence our outcomes. But I maintain that this is a grace that we've been given. It's the ability to intentionally influence our lives. We can debate it, raise countless examples of why a people or person can't be more intentional in their own lives. But that's not what this more is about. In fact, it's quite the opposite. More is about a choice. So what will you choose? Please know that you're invited back each week to join us as we celebrate the choices people make to be successful in their being, their roles, and their pursuit for more. Next week, we'll be speaking with Mark Cohen, the Commissioner of the CFL. But until then, if you have any thoughts, ideas, or questions, please contact us via our blog. Thanks for joining us, and remember, in all that you do, do it for truth.